Okay, morning, Council. Just waiting for a couple more faces. And here we go. I would like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the meeting today. I can confirm that we have quorum and that everyone, with the exception of Councillor Armour, is present. Councillor Armour is away on vacation. And to start us off today, the honor of reading the land acknowledgement statement belongs to Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Miigwech. I'm honored to do so today. So I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take action towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. It's recommended that the General Committee meeting agenda dated Wednesday, July 28, 2021 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have one invited and ceremonial presentation today, and that is Dean Campbell from Campbell Bus Lines. And I'm not sure if Trish Bennett's with you, and of course Steve Hernan's here from our staff. Welcome, Dean. If you want to come on screen, that would be great. There he is.
Good morning.
Good morning. The floor is yours, or Steve, are you starting?
Maybe I will just give a quick introduction and make council aware of who Dean is. So Dean and myself are here today to talk to council about our transit system. We did have a report that was going to be on the last agenda. It created a lot of questions, and I thought it'd be best maybe if we just had an open discussion today to see if we can get some direction as to where we want to go with the transit system. So a little bit of a background, if you will. We had a transit study done 3-4 years ago. It talked about expanding the system and what we could do with the system and how it could operate. And it laid out a 5-year plan on how it could improve and grow. We looked at it at budget time a few years ago. There was some money put aside, about $85,000 for an expansion. We quickly realized that some of the numbers that our consultant had used were incorrect, and it was going to cost much more to expand the system, in the neighborhood of $140,000 for that first phase. We were going to bring it back again for council's review and consideration. And then the district got into a review of their transit system, and there was discussion early in that stage of maybe a regional transit system and what could we do to improve Bracebridge, Huntsville, and the entire area. Since that time, the District of Muskoka has completed their study and decided that their focus is on linking the outer lining communities and bringing them into places like Huntsville and Bracebridge. So that whole concept disappeared. And then we were back to what do we do with the Huntsville system. Right about then, COVID hit and everything just went into a tailspin, and we weren't looking at expanding, we were looking at surviving at that time. And we are continuing to run in that mode where we're finally stepping it back up with more riders on the bus. But we went to a free system, so there was no money exchanging hands, and that all has to come to an end. So we thought, okay, if we're going to get back on track, are we going to make changes to the transit system? That's where we want to take that discussion today. So maybe as a quick review, if it's all right with you, Mayor Terziano, I'll just share my screen and we can just look at a route and some of the systems, and we can talk about some of the problems that we had. And then when you have questions, or Dean can jump in at any time. The reason Dean Campbell's with us today, Campbell Bus Line has been the operator of our transit system since it began. And Trish Bennett working with Dean on this. Trish unfortunately couldn't make it today. They're really knowledgeable. They're knowledgeable in the riders. They're knowledgeable in the stops. And every time I get before a council member, they ask a question and I got to run back to Dean. So I thought, let's just bring Dean and he can answer any of your questions that you might have as to how well the bus is used and where people are getting on or off or what they're finding with the ridership. So I'm just going to share the screen quickly, just as a quick reminder. What you're looking at here is basically a map of Huntsville and our existing transit system with the proposed expansion routes that we were looking at one time. So the difference, and I know I've had some discussions with council members about Bracebridge system versus Huntsville, and how come ours is approximately 23, 24 kilometers long, and it takes a 2-hour, what we call a 2-hour loop. And Bracebridge is running the same thing, about a 24-kilometer run, which they're doing in about an hour and 10. How can they do it an hour quicker? And it's a lot to do with the layout of the town. In Bracebridge, if you will, they just do a giant circle. They start at Riverside, they go up towards the district offices, Walmart, they come back down around the Canadian Tire, and they go back down to the Riverside area. So they do a circle. Our town, the way it's laid out and with the river through the center, doesn't allow us to do that. So we're starting down on the west end of Huntsville. We're picking up at the Legion Manor, up through the residential area. We're picking up on the hill, if you will, in the old part of Huntsville. It's the traditional part of Huntsville, hitting the subdivisions out to the retirement home or the senior living on Brunel Road, back in through the Summit Center where we're starting to drop patrons off, back downtown where we're dropping people off, and then we head out to the commercial area, Walmart, and do a loop out through the Walmart area, and then we're back in through, if you will, to the west, or so the east end of Huntsville, by Price Choppers, out through Meadow Park, working our way to the hospital. And then we turn around and we basically run that route backwards, doing the same thing. And that is basically the direction of the bus all day long, coming and going, picking it up. So at any one location, it's about a 2-hour loop. Once the system starts running, if you get on the west end, before a bus is coming back down there to head back to the west end, it's about a 2-hour back, because we're doing that loop twice. One of the things that the consultant suggested to us through his input with the riders and the community groups was create a 1-hour loop. And Dean and I have done a lot of work trying to find a 1-hour loop in this with one bus. And Dean can speak more to it, but it's literally impossible. The amount of ground that we're covering. We joked about it. We did develop one 1-hour loop finally a few weeks ago. And if we made absolutely no stops and there was no traffic, we could do it in 1 hour. Well, that's not how transit runs. Transit's stopping all the time. That's the whole design of it. And the patrons that we're picking up, a lot of them are seniors. They're not just hopping on a bus. They're taking their times to get on the bus, get their groceries on the bus, whatever it might be. So every stop is 2 to 3 minutes. So if you do 20 stops on a run, you've added an hour to a run right off the bat. One of the concepts that was brought forth by the consultant was to put 2 buses on and create a 1-hour loop in Huntsville, and then have that bus go up to to cover more of Muskoka Road 3. The second bus would be starting an hour later. It would be covering the Huntsville route, and then it would be going out to Hidden Valley, if you will. So the north of Muskoka 3 and the Hidden Valley would be covered every 2 hours, but we'd always have a bus hitting the stops in town on a 1-hour continuous loop. We tried that a few years back with the Hidden Valley. It didn't work. There was some requests when the consultant was here from the resort group to expand it to the Hidden Valley. And Dean can talk about where they get the requests for the rides and what they're seeing. We're here today to sort of get some direction from council as to what they'd like to see with the bus routes and what what the constituents are talking to you about and what you're hearing for concerns. I can tell you from an operations perspective, we get very few complaints or concerns or issues raised with transit. The people that use the transit system have come accustomed to the system that we run, and they seem to make the schedule work for them. If you went to a 1-hour loop or even a 30-minute loop, would you increase ridership? Some people argue that you will increase ridership because it'll be more of a convenience. The other school says that no, you won't increase ridership greatly. It just gives the riders more option. So it's not a, if you build it, they will come. It's not a guarantee that will happen. But once you start a service level, it's always hard to back out of it. And that's why we're having a hard time making a definitive recommendation, if you will, to committee for consideration. The thought of just cutting this route down to make it 1 hour is very difficult because our residential areas are much different than our commercial and the hospital areas. So, I mean, we could do a 1 hour loop in here with one bus and just drive the residents around from neighborhood to neighborhood, but they'd never get to the commercial areas. And if we decided just to do the other side of the river, we're basically running from the hospital mall to the Walmart area and back, and we're not servicing the residential. The bottom line is it's the residential area, and they want to get to the other side of the river, to the commercial area, if you will. So the only way that we can find to do a 1 hour loop is with two buses, which is a doubling of the cost of the regular transit service. The other service I'll just talk about too is we do have what we call modified transit. It's not specialized, although it looks and runs like a specialized service. It doesn't match the hours of operation of the regular bus. So on Saturdays, we don't run the modified transit. We just run one bus, and we try and service all the passengers that want to ride. The modified transit is a door-to-door service where you can call it 24 hours in advance, and you can book it, and it'll pick you up at your residence wherever you are, and it will drive you right to your location. You know, hospital, to the mall, to the library, to the Summit Center, wherever you want to go. And that's for people with mobility issues, if you will. So it's not an able body that can call that and book a ride. It is somebody with a mobility issue that needs assistance of a door-to-door pickup. So maybe I'll just I'll stop sharing, or I'll ask Dean to maybe comment on the existing system and how it works. And
Steve, that was a great explanation of the system. Just one thing I'd like to add on there was our discussions on the addition of the new portions of Huntsville, such as Campus Trail and the Chaffee Street extension, the housing developments in there, as well as the large apartment building on Highway 60. I think it's important that we begin to service those areas. That the bulk of our inquiries or questions have been regarding those areas.
A great question, or a great point there, Dean. So Dean and I drove that area and looked at how we could extend it. And with our existing buses running now on the routes that they're running now, we feel it could be extended. There's a couple areas in town that we feel that we're no longer requiring service, and we could drop those areas. An example being down by Bickley Fords. We used to go down there because of the animal shelter. We're picking very few riders up on that side of the highway at all. So if we drop that area, we could easily come out of the hospital, go up towards Campus Trail, cut across Chaffee Township Road, pick up the new affordable housing that's being worked on, and pick up the new apartment on Highway 60 and come back in Highway 60. But doing that with one bus still leaves us on a 2 hour loop. And the real question is council satisfied? And are the riders satisfied with a 2 hour loop? Or would you really like to see a 1 hour loop? And I've got one other quick chart I can just share, if you don't mind, Mayor Terziano, and it's a spreadsheet, because everybody always asks, what about the costing? So we put together a very simple form spreadsheet, if you will. Have I shared that one? No, I haven't. Excel, there it is. So the funding of transit is complicated on a good day. The provincial government had promised to look at the steady form of operational funding for operational costs. The way they work it now is they look at what your spend is this year, and that sets your grant 2 years down the road. So if you spend a lot of money on transit this year, 2 years down the road, your grant will be much bigger, which means 2 years down the road, your spend is a lot less, which means 2 years down the road after that, your grant is a lot smaller. So this grant is going up and down all the time. So it's very, very complicated system to look at. But if you will, right now, in the basics of terms, we're running a regular bus, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're running it 5 days a week with one bus for 52 weeks of the year. And we're running the specialized or modified transit on reduced hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, one bus for 2,300 hours. On Saturdays, we use one bus. It runs 8 hours for a combined service of 52 weeks. And where I'm going with this spreadsheet, you add up all the hours, you add up the different rates, and it's costing us almost $300,000 to run the bus. Between the grants and the revenue of $166,000, we have a tax support tax rate supported cost of about $130,000 a year. That's what the taxpayers of Huntsville are paying in the operational budget to run the transit service. If we decide to go to a 1 hour loop service, maintaining the existing hours, we're going to 2 buses basically. So if we go to a 2 bus system, what your costs become is $269,000. So it's an increase of $142,000. And then we've looked at, do we do a 1 hour loop system on a reduced service? So instead of running it from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Dean and his staff have reviewed the numbers and they say that the peak times is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we looked at that and said, okay, if we ran that sort of a system, what would the cost be? And once again, we've come to the numbers. We understand what the increase is. And the reason I show you this chart, and it's really basic, is as we're talking today, if there's a question about what if we do 3 buses, what if we run 7 buses or 7 days a week, we can quickly look at some numbers to give you a range as to what we're looking at and what the increases would be. And then obviously from there, hopefully we'll get some direction and bring a full report back to council with detailed numbers. But I just wanted to share that with you. Your costing today, your tax rate supported is $130,000 is what the municipality is paying once we look at what the grants and the revenue are. And if we start to increase it to a 2 bus system, you're going to be looking at an increase of approximately $142,000 a year to the taxpayer in an operational cost. And I know that's a lot of information, and I will turn the floor back over to you, Mayor Terziano, and Dean and I are here to answer any questions.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, let's go to Councillor Withey first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for all that information. I believe transit is critical, a critical service for any municipality. But I'm wondering, there's a lot of municipalities now moving to an on-demand transit system. There's a number of companies out there that give you this, can give you this information on how this works. Pantonium is one I've got up on my screen right now. On-demand transit service, unrivaled in efficiency, optimization algorithm, uses less vehicles, moves more people, replace or augment underperforming fixed routes with on-demand service that can attract similar ridership to bus routes. I think this is really worth exploring. As I said, lots of municipalities in Ontario are going this way. It's more efficient. Rides are booked from apps, web portals, or by phone. I think that we could actually bring in probably more areas, like there's nothing in Port Sydney, for example, and I know there's a lot of people that work in town who could use transit. So I would strongly suggest that we look at this on-demand transit system. I think it would be great to get a report back on this kind of thing, because this could actually revolutionize the way we do transit in our municipality, make it cheaper, more efficient.
Okay, I don't know whether Dean or Steve, you want to make any comment just on that particular idea, or?
I understand what Councillor Withey is saying, and actually Innisfil did a very large project, very similar, if you followed that one, and they were touted all over the place of their huge success. I know the follow-up on that one is it became a huge expense to the municipality. It was so successful, they're now looking at getting away from that and putting in fixed bus routes. Basically, they were using an Uber service where the residents were allowed to call Uber, and for a basic fare rate of about $2.50, the Uber would pick them up anywhere in Innisfil and take them where they wanted to go. They touted it was much cheaper than running transit buses. And I know CAO Corey was involved in some of those presentations done by the CAO down there. That system quickly ballooned over $1 million a year in operational cost, and they're now getting out of it and going back to the fixed routes. But we can look at it again. We certainly can look and see if there's other apps and other ways to deal with it.
Quick follow-up, if I may.
Go ahead.
I mean, that's one example. When you look online about all the other municipalities are using it, I think that they may, show you a different story. And some places, for example, Stratford uses on demand for certain days of the week, Saturdays and Sundays, for example, to their advantage. So I really think it's worth exploring. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Steve and Dean, for the presentation. You're right, a lot of information and really useful. I really more or less a statement from me. I absolutely support an expansion, actually, as Dean, you alluded to the areas that I think could be areas where there will be a lot of need, and that is the new building, and there will be more on Highview. The rentals, and you mentioned that, Steve, so the rentals there, and Dean, you said the rentals on Highway 60, and the whole expanded neighborhoods out in off Chaffee. So I think that, and plus Campus Trail, which is definitely appealing to a seniors population. So I think from my perspective, those are a lot of new areas that should be part of our regular route. So that just exacerbates the existing problem of, we can't do our route in less than 2 hours. Where does that take us? To me, I think it's essential. I think transit is essential. I kind of agree with Councillor Withey that if there are alternate ways of delivering it, that we should look at them. It's funny though, because you talked about Innisfil, and I remember hearing from the CAO of Innisfil, he was touting the great success of that story. So that's interesting that has turned around. But bottom line for me is transit's essential. The new areas, the new developments that were coming online, I believe it would be an essential service for those areas, not just a would be nice, but essential, especially if we start making planning decisions whereby our parking requirements are less than what we would normally do elsewhere, which we've already done. We've already made a couple of those decisions. So we're kind of assuming people may not have as many cars as we're traditionally accustomed to. So I think from my perspective, more is better, but smarter is better too. So that I leave in your capable hands, Director Hernan and Mr. Campbell. So thank you for the presentation.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Question I have through you to Steve and maybe Julia or whoever might be responsible for grants. But if we were to expand the service to 2 buses, would that result in a potential uptick from the province with regards to grant money? I think what we've heard from Steve is that it wouldn't necessarily result in an uptick in terms of revenue, but would it result potentially in an uptick from the government with regards to grants? Have we explored that, and is that a potential? And the other thing too, I saw the figure of 166,000 a year, which is a combination of revenue and grants. And what percentage of that is grants, and what percentage is revenue from passengers and usage? Thank you.
Steve?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, I'll take. So the quick one, the revenue from transit fares is about $30,000 a year, and we're looking back at 2019 and backwards. We didn't look at the last 2 years because of COVID and the restrictions. That the revenue is just gone. But we're traditionally, it's $30,000 a year as revenue, and it's about $130,000 in grants is what we're receiving on the operational side. We have been approved for capital grants for transit expansion. It has to be expansion, and we can use that money over the next, I think it's 9 years. And it's called 27-cent dollars, which means that we spend 27 cents out of every dollar. So if we were to expand the route and put another bus on, and the town wanted to take ownership of that bus, we could buy that bus on 27-cent dollars. So it'd be cheaper, which then I would believe that our operator would be cheaper, because obviously right now the contract we have with Dean is he's supplying the buses. So it would be cheaper to operate that second bus for the first 7 years. Now with our asset, where it gets complicated is our asset management plan says that if you buy an asset, you have to save to replace it. So we're immediately starting to save to replace it. So although it would be a cheaper operational cost, we would see an increase in our asset management plan that we'd have to put more money away to replace that bus down the road. So what we have, Julie and I have talked about, and once we have a feel from council, or once we have direction from council which way we want to go with transit, we will then run the numbers every which way to see if it makes sense for the municipality to purchase the buses and contract with a service such as Campbell's Bus Line to run the buses, or whether it makes sense to stay out of the ownership of the buses. So I hope that answers your questions. There is capital dollars available. We have been approved for a fixed fee of capital dollars, and we've got about 9 years when we can spend it. But you can't spend it on replacing existing. It has to be an expansion.
Sure.
Councillor Schumacher.
Going to say, does Brian have follow-up? He put his hand.
Did you have a
Actually,
follow-up,
yes.
Brian?
Yeah, I did, Your Worship, and thank you,
Okay.
Dion. And just to comment, I guess like probably majority of committee, I would like to somehow see an expansion of this service. I think it's critical, and I think if we look at the population of the demographics that it does service in our community, then I think it becomes even more critical. So if there is a way we could expand it and do it, in a sensible and economic way, I'm very much in favor of that, Your Worship. Thanks for that, Dion.
Thank you.
No
Go ahead,
problem.
Councillor Schumacher.
No problem. Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So yeah, as Steve, you're aware, this comes up quite a bit at our AAC meetings quite often. There is a lot of discussion around transit and the expansion of transit. I did attend the district expansion meeting on behalf of the AAC, and yeah, we were kind of hopeful it was going to do some more for in town, but it is nice that they are expanding to the outer communities. But yeah, modified, even there's issues with somebody calling at 1:30 and somebody else has it booked, every Wednesday at 1:30, right? So how do we get an opportunity for those riders that want to, be able to have those opportunities? That's what I want to see, is looking at that expansion. I know we did a survey, which is great, and I think we probably need to relook at that again around ridership. But we did declare a climate change emergency, and this is one of those areas that I think we need to take action on as a town, is to look at the expansion pieces. So, I mean, I know we get gas tax funding. Is there a way that some of that, I believe this covers off some of that funding that we're able to put into, Julie is popping up on that one. Is there opportunities to partner with, as you said, I know Deerhurst, Hidden Valley, we're looking for expansions out Highway 60. I get that their idea of a route, when talking with them, is a little different because they want like a 7 a.m. start for some of their staff. But is there a way to partner with some businesses who are willing to put some money in if we can do that expansion to start a little earlier and help out? Or does the on-demand service that Councillor Withey was speaking of maybe work better for that area? I would just like to see, I want to definitely see something come back with expansions, with some ideas around what we can do to service everyone in Huntsville. And Julie, are you going to speak to the gas tax?
Julia?
Your Worship, just to clarify, so the funding that Director Hernan was talking about it's provincial gas tax money. So we are already getting those funds. If you're thinking of the federal gas tax money, that money is for capital, so it can't be used for. It can only be used for capital, so not for operating.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you. So I'd like to know more about the specialized transit. It costs about the same amount as the regular transit. Numbers of ridership, perhaps that's where we change the model, and whether we, fund a taxi service for these few people, if it is only a few people. Can you tell me what kind of ridership numbers we're looking at for the specialized?
Dean, maybe you could talk about the ridership on the specialized if you could, or modified.
Sure. The 2019 ridership was 6,130 riders compared to 20,000 on the regular service bus. Those people take a lot longer to transport because they are a lot of ambulatory, a lot of wheelchair. So there's loading and unloading involved with those people.
And the numbers again for the specialized were?
6,130.
And the regular?
19,268.
Wow. Okay. Thanks.
And Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when people call in for a ride, specialized or modified Wednesday at 1 o'clock, you will put more than one rider on that bus if your staff can coordinate it. So you will pick up 2 or 3 riders if they're all heading to the same direction in the same area, and you can coordinate it. It's not always running with just one rider going to one location. Is that correct?
That's correct, Steve. A lot of times it's actually at maximum capacity.
Councillor Withey? Councillor, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry, got me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I thought I clicked it. Just in the ensuing discussion after I spoke before, something popped into mind about cost. And one of the things that I don't know if we want to look at, but perhaps maybe we could try to increase advertising revenue on the bus routes. There are a lot of other municipalities where they're actually a business such as mine might want to wrap an entire bus with advertising, which would help offset some of the costs. Something to consider.
Okay. I just, I wanted to make one comment because Steve and I have met a couple of times talking about this, and we also met with Debbie Kerwin, who was one of the big pushers back when she was the head of the Accessibility Committee. And my initial concern was really this whole 2-hour loop, but then when we get looking at the map, I realize it's 2 hours between the time a bus starts from somewhere and gets back to that somewhere. Because I was looking at it from a pickup in the West End and it taking basically almost 2 hours to get to the hospital. But then if the pickup was over on Shea Road, you're probably at the hospital in 20 minutes. So it's only a 2-hour run if you happen to be at the very start and the very end of where you're going. So I'm gathering from that a lot of riders actually get to their stops much sooner than 2 hours. It's just that the bus will not loop again to that area for another 2 hours. So I was really concerned about the 2 hours. I'm not as concerned about the 2 hours now listening to the conversation as I am about expansion and how our town's expanding and how a lot of the more affordable areas are expanding. And so from my perspective, I think that might be the area we want to look in more going forward is expansion. And Councillor Schumacher made a good point too about our climate change policies. And I have had people contact me about the possibility of our next bus purchase to be an electric bus, and whether that would be our own purchase or whether that would be something we set up through contracting Campbell's Bus Line, but to have the idea of an electric bus on the horizon. So that said, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Steve, I think you've heard sort of the direction where council wants to go. I think that we believe in our transit system and we also believe in improving it. but we have to balance that with the costs. And so the idea of making it more efficient, making it better, maybe doing things differently, but we do have to balance it. I mean, if we just double the cost of transit, you know, we're upping the tax base by a considerable amount of money too. So I think we have to look at every angle to see if we can actually expand our service without actually doubling the costs. So I don't know, council, whether anybody wants to actually put a resolution on the table asking for a future report. We don't have anything right now. I know staff doesn't like just a verbal go back and bring back more information. So is there anybody that wants to put a resolution on the table? Councillor Schumacher.
Yeah, I would definitely put that on the table to explore options for expansion. I mean, look at, as Councillor Withey said, the on-demand service, look at partnerships, abilities to, whether that's partnerships with businesses or, as Councillor Withey alluded to, advertisement options to help with costs.
Okay, Tanya, I'm assuming you're gonna be writing something up for us quickly here. And I guess the other thing, we should really have a time frame, and I don't know if realistically we can ask to have this for something that we can include in the 22 budget. Especially considering the 22 budget might be our most challenging budget in 20 years, given everything we've been through. So, but I think that if we got the work done, then maybe we could find the financing for the start of 23 at least. Tanya, are you going to share your screen? Sorry, Steve.
I was just going to suggest maybe you could move on to your next item, and Tanya and I could have some time to work on a resolution if that's acceptable to the clerk. Can we bring it back before the end of the meeting, or?
Yep, we can absolutely do that. Good suggestion. Thank you for that. And so at this point, I will thank you, Dean, for coming and being with us today. And also for providing us with an excellent transit service now.
Well, thank you very much. If I could just say one more comment. The average rider is on the transit bus for 20 minutes.
Okay.
So the average ride is a 20-minute ride.
That's great to know. Okay, thank you. Council, we're going to move on to our next agenda item then, and that we have no deputations, so that would be under new business and under corporate services. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock. It is recommended that bylaw 2017-41, a bylaw to establish rates of remuneration and compensation for members of council, be amended to adjust remuneration levels for council members annually by the Canadian Consumer Price Index, CPI trim, increase year over year as of July. And further, that a bylaw be prepared for the 2022-26 term of council with option, right now that's blank, as outlined in Report Corp 2021-31 and presented to council for consideration. Julia, do you want to highlight the report?
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So this report is before you. We do have a bylaw in place that we've agreed that we'll review that once a term of council, we will review council remuneration. So this is that opportunity to have the information before you and for you guys to have that discussion and the review as to how you would like to see the bylaw for the next term of council. So we did commit that we wouldn't do this in the last term or last year of the council term. So that's why we're bringing this for you right now. So this report does have some information that is has comparators, and these comparators are the same ones that are used for the staff composition, and they were recently updated back in I think 2019. So we made a couple of changes in 2019, but those are the comparators as outlined in the report. The last time that this council compensation review was done was in 2016. And council recommended that for this term of council, that the remuneration increase by the cost of living, so the CPI, each year for the term of council, and that to keep all other areas of the bylaw the same. So that could be another option for the next term of council, is to continue to do that. The benefit with that is that it keeps in line with CPI, and that that you keep it competitive so that you can attract people into that position. Other options that council can certainly consider are outlined in the report. So again, option A was to keep it the same as last time and just have it continue to increase by CPI. To have no increase, to increase by an amount that you would determine. You could increase it by a percentage. You could align all positions so that they're at the 35th percentile of all the comparators. Or you could add a lump sum amount to each chair, or you could do something completely different than that you wish. So those are just some options that we've come up with. And then once there's some discussion and we get some direction, we can certainly bring back the impact of that if necessary, and then bring back the bylaw for consideration. So this really is your opportunity to provide comments on this bylaw.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Council, questions, comments, suggestions for options? Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would suggest that we go with the CPI trim and keep it in line with what the staff are being allotted per year. It's just consistent and simple. That's my vote.
Thank you for that. Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a observation, and we've seen this before on other comparators. I wonder why all the comparators are basically to the south of us, and we don't seem to take into account anybody sort of north of us. You know, the Parry Sounds, the North Bays, other communities up there as well, just to give a sort of a circular comparison. That being said, I note that the councillor, we're right down at the bottom of the councillor remuneration on the chart. Just that observation as well, but I'm okay with what Councillor Wiebe said.
Lisa, do you want to comment on the comparators and why nothing north or east of us? Or
yeah, thank you. The municipalities north of us are mostly single tier. And with respect to if we were going to lose any of our employees, the majority of them are heading south of us. So when we look at comparators, we also look at where are our existing employees going, and those were the two major reasons as to why those comparators were chosen.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to echo what Councillor Wiebe said. I think that for me is the most sensible course of action. So to be consistent with our previous policy.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would agree. I think the CPI increase has worked well for us and is fair, and I would agree with that as well. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like council would be in favor of option A, which is the increase by the CPI, same as staff, basically. I'm going to put option A in to the blank spot, and then if there are no further questions, I'll call the vote. So the resolution is read with option A inserted. All in favor? And that carries. Okay. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. It is recommended that the updated staff recruitment policy, HREP 10, attached to Schedule A to report HR 2021-05 be approved, and further that Council Resolution number 3117 be rescinded. And this is a report on an amendment to staff policy. And Lisa, do you want to highlight the change in it?
Yes, thank you, Chair Terziano. So the report before you today, as noted, is to add a section to our staff recruitment policy to utilize the services of a headhunter when warranted. To better explain, we would use a headhunter service if our job ads are not generating the type of candidates we want or are generating less interest than anticipated for senior or specialized positions. Although Human Resources does have some connections in our field, our reach is actually limited in that regard. So a headhunter will have the resources and network to find candidates to fill senior and specialized positions. The reason being, individuals who are also looking for employment use headhunter services solely, and they don't necessarily apply through normal job advertisements. And this provides for a more diverse pool of potential candidates for us. The discretion to utilize a headhunter would be through the CAO, and the cost would be funded through the Human Resources Capital Reserve and approved by council through the operating budget or by resolution. So to clarify, council will still be consulted when we are recruiting for director positions, as this is not changed in the current policy. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those for you.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm a little surprised that we're not using them already. I'm a big fan of this service. I've utilized it in other areas in my life. I think that it, as you say, I think it really casts a broader net. I think as another suggestion, I don't know if you're doing this now, but one of the barriers you might find to getting good people in senior management is to perhaps delete the line that says must have municipal experience. Because there are lots of people out there that have good skills that can be utilized. That's my comment. Thanks.
Okay.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So if I understand this policy at the moment, we only use the headhunter approach if we have difficulty in finding a suitable replacement for a position. Is that basically correct through you to Lisa?
Through you, Chair Terziano, I think this probably goes back a while, but I think we've used a headhunter service once. We find with our review of our internal staff and positions, we determine whether we go internal and external for jobs as well. But a lot of the municipalities are starting to reach out to headhunters initially with respect to senior management positions. We haven't done that as of late. However, with our succession plan and our analysis of positions that may become vacant, it would be an option for us to look to a headhunter service to fill those senior level positions.
So,
yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So at the moment, we have a succession policy in place. Is that sort of the policy or the procedure we're following at the moment? In other words, I know we've gone through this at the district level where we know that retirements are imminent or positions that are being left are imminent. And so we look at succession planning in that particular regard. So are we doing that at the moment, Lisa?
Through you, Chair Terziano, we don't have a specific succession plan policy that is coming. We have done an analysis of all of our positions and the incumbents with respect to, you know, what it looks like in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years with respect to potential retirements. And that will be coming forward through our corporate human resources strategy plan. So we do have a staff recruitment policy, which speaks to It gives us criteria as to how we advertise with respect to positions that become vacant for different reasons. However, the succession plan is a component that will be coming through for review before the end of the year. So,
Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, just one more comment, yeah, I think our policy that we have, or the procedure we have at the moment, is more than satisfactory. I mean, we relish in the fact that we have great staff, and I do like the fact that if at all possible, any replacements we do get do have municipal experience. I think that is sort of critical, because we know those of us who are have ever been on council for the first time, and we all have at one time or another, I guess, we know that the learning curve in municipal procedure is not a curve, it's basically vertical. So I think the idea of, if at all possible, recruiting from existing municipal experience, I think is a good policy to follow.
Okay. I don't see any other hands. I don't have a problem with using headhunters when they're required. My one concern is not having guidelines that suggest we explore our internal candidates before going out for a headhunter. I know the municipalities in Muskoka, 3 of them, I won't name them, have just recently used a headhunter to go out for a top position, and all hired internally. So that's where I see that kind of a spend of money not to our advantage. If we go out, use a headhunter, and then hire somebody on staff to fill a position, it's just a total waste of money. So I don't know whether the policy can be amended such that we have an internal process prior to going out. And I see the CAO has her hand up, so.
Thank you, Chair Terziano. So just to confirm, we absolutely would do that evaluation. So as Ms. Smith had noted, she had indicated that we do have a succession plan, that we would be looking at whether we have internal candidates or not that can fill the position. So we would only ever use a headhunter if we thought that the internal resources were not for sure qualified for the position. I'm not saying that through a headhunter process that an internal candidate might actually be the successful one. But we would do that evaluation to determine if we felt that person was the individual that should fill that role.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I raised my hand just after your last comment because I'm not sure I necessarily agree that it's a waste of money if we end up hiring someone internally. I can think of at least one case where one of the municipalities in Muskoka went through a headhunting process, had a number of extraordinary candidates, and ended up hiring from within. And I think that what it did do was show that the candidate that was successful was indeed the right candidate and was able to compete, fairly and legitimately and all of that. In fact, it really legitimized that particular selection. So to me, it's almost the reverse. It was an important process to go through. I don't think it was a waste at all. So I by the way, I'm really in favor of this proposal.
And just to clarify, I'm certainly not suggesting that we don't advertise for the best candidate out there and seek out the best candidate. I'm just saying the expense of a headhunter might not always be prudent. People do find great candidates without using the services of headhunters. Anyways, I don't see any other questions, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries.
thank you.
Okay. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock, whereas the town of Huntsville was in negotiations with the District of Muskoka for joint shared legal services, and whereas joint shared legal services through the District of Muskoka would only be feasible if 2 or more lower tier municipalities participated in the service, and whereas only the town of Huntsville and the township of Georgian Bay expressed an interest to participate in the said program, and whereas on July 12, 2021, the Township of Georgian Bay confirmed they would no longer be pursuing legal services through the District of Muskoka. Now therefore is recommended that Resolution Corp 4-16 and 5419 be hereby rescinded. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Chair Terziano. So the motion pretty much states what has happened. This has been a bit of a lengthy process. We did start a number of years ago in an effort to try to have shared services with the District of Muskoka for legal. It does not appear that that's going to proceed, so we will have staff report back to Council with some potential options whereby we might see some cost savings with respect to legal services. So we will see that shortly, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All in favor? That carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. It is recommended that the Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to sign the revised memorandum of understanding between the Huntsville Public Library and the Corporation of the Town of Huntsville as attached to Report Corp CAO 2021-09, and further that the existing memorandum of understanding dated November 17th, 2017 be hereby terminated. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the report does outline that the previous MOU was fairly dated, and the CEO and myself had decided that it was time that we do an evaluation and update that MOU. So we've been working on that for a number of months. Due to COVID, it was slightly delayed, but both the library board and the staff at the town of Huntsville feel that it addresses everything. The way that it's laid out, we will have the ability to add additional schedules if we do provide additional support to the library. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? None? All in favor? Carries. A resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Whereas Council recognizes that implementing a remote work Whereas Council recognizes that implementing a remote work model is essential to modernizing work practices and would contribute to the town's strategic and climate change goals, and would support employees in achieving a positive work-life balance. Therefore, it is recommended that the remote work policy attached as Schedule A to Report CAO 2021-11 be adopted. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think it's fair to say that with the pandemic, it certainly has served as a roadmap for us and a test to see how our policies work and how technology can be utilized within a remote work environment. And the investments that we've made over the past 16 months have truly indicated that we have done very well with the remote working option. So in the hybrid work model being proposed, office spaces can be transformed to accommodate either smaller footprints while emphasizing spaces that are geared toward networking and culture building, as well as having an emphasis on training spaces and individual spaces or office becoming team spaces. So the global recovery that began taking shape in the first part of 2021 has laid the groundwork for a dynamic second half of the year. Organizations that listen to their employees' needs and build balanced hybrid work environments can be better positioned to break down silos between the physical and remote workplaces. They meet customer demands and we're able to retain talent. I think the most important thing to note during the consideration of a remote work policy is we have to adapt. We have to adapt and shift in the generational employees that work for the town. We absolutely will be directly competing, not only within the District of Muskoka, but all across the province. Because what's going to happen is talents are going to be looking for accommodations such as remote work policies. So our upcoming leadership stars, and we are going to see quite a few of them. We actually have a number of employees in the next 5 years, senior positions, as well as managers that will be retiring.
So we're losing a lot of knowledge within our organization in 5 years. So we need to be that employer that people choose to come to. So one of the questions that we usually get within an interview is, why should I work for you? It's an amazing question. Why should I come to work for you? Well, we want to be able to provide those opportunities, such as remote work policies. It will be important for us to have those policies in place so that we can retain the talent and it should be our top priority. So I think the perfect action item for recently, and it speaks to the climate change as well. So recently council did approve that we were under a climate emergency. There's no question that a remote policy will help us support that as well. Because if we have employees, you can see in the report that we have employees that travel from quite distances, Parry Sound, Aurelia, further north. Like, we do have a large geographic area that our employees are traveling from. So if we can accommodate a remote work policy whereby there's no effect to the service levels provided and the work gets done and we reduce our carbon footprint, I think a policy, a tool such as this is instrumental to our success and to meeting those obligations of council. So I think we really need to consider this very seriously because times have changed. The showing up every day at 8:30 to 4:30 and sitting in your office doesn't have to happen any longer. So I really do think that even though a lot of employees are very excited to be back, I've heard many comments from many employees, they can't wait to get back here. I'm one of them. I'm one of the people that prefers to work in the office. I like to be here. But there are options where we can have staff work from home and it will have a positive effect on many fronts. So I would really ask that committee give this policy serious consideration today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Denise, you couldn't have said it better. And I think the one word that needs to be highlighted again, which was in the report, is the word modern. If you look at how the world's changed, I would say we don't even have a choice. We have to implement a policy such as this one. And then we didn't even talk about things like how this improves our downtown parking situation. You're right, the climate emergency. I mean, it's for real. And to have people have to get up, warm up cars in the winter because that's what their job description says, to be there at 4:30 in the morning or 8:30 in the morning. I think it's huge. And all those who do modernize will get ahead. Those who don't will be left so far behind. It'll be amazing. So everything mentioned above, everything previously mentioned, along with the issues we have with our housing stock, I think we have no choice but to implement this policy. So I'm fully behind it. Thanks.
Councillor Withey.
No, I was next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I absolutely do not support this policy, and I will tell you why. In the business world that I operate in, the actual shift is back to in-office work, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is that, first of all, it's basic human nature to be social with coworkers, to be more productive and get things done. And a lot of people that have been through working at home in this pandemic have demonstrated to be less productive and less, feeling more isolated. Even though it might be their choice in the future, it doesn't work for a productive work environment. In fact, in recent information in the news from the States, that workers in the cities are actually flocking back to their offices. I think that if you're running a business and you want to be maximum productivity, people need social interaction. They need collaboration between people. They need those conversations that happen, in the hallway or wherever, to be more productive. I get the pandemic, of course, forced the situation. I can tell you from my own experience, we had issues with our internet, so people couldn't work from home. But the couple times that we did set up people from home, they actually decided to come back because they were less productive and, quite frankly, lonely. I think when you have an organization, it's a team. And when you have teams, you need to be together. And sure, you can, if something else happens, sort of another global pandemic, you're going to shift to do that. But I just don't feel that if we're going to be the best municipal corporation, we need people to be together, to work together, to collaborate together, to socialize together. And as I said, the studies that are coming out of the states now, where they were originally saying that cities are going to, all this business property is going to be up for rent. It's actually working in the reverse now as corporations are looking at what happened during the pandemic as far as productivity and basic human well-being. We're social animals. And I can tell you from my experience with dealing with insurance companies, with underwriters working at home, it was almost impossible to get things done because the access wasn't there. The opportunity for those people to speak directly with colleagues at a moment's notice on an issue that you needed solving, it was not very good for productivity at all. So for all those reasons, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm totally in favor of this. I think this is a great policy, and for all of the reasons that Councillor Wiebe had already mentioned. And the structure of the policy is such that, yes, there is the option if we, to Councillor Withey's comments, there's a lot of merit in what he said for sure. But on the other hand, I think what we've learned during this pandemic is that a lot of people work very, very well from home, and they're very, very productive from home. I personally would be one of those who would have to go to the office because, sitting on my dock has great appeal sometimes when I should be maybe doing other things. But that's me, and that doesn't apply to the majority of our staff. For those who would like to work from home, okay, great. There are going to be those situations, as Councillor Wiebe mentioned, where weather dictates or distance dictates that maybe it's prudent for them to be working from home that particular day. I think if there is one area of concern that I might have, it would be access to planning department and building for some of our constituents. But for the most part, I think there are many areas of our staff that could easily and very functionally work from home and do a great job, do the great job that they've been doing through this pandemic. So I'm totally in favor of this. I think all the options are there, and I salute our CAO for putting this together. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too support, obviously, in principle, the idea of allowing employees to work from home. I think in response to Councillor Withey's comment about the camaraderie, I couldn't agree with him more, for sure. When I was working full time, doing what I did, it was really in collaboration with colleagues. And so for me, going in was a really important feature. However, as the policy identifies, one of the things that we're saying is, I think for a lot of employees, the federal government's been doing it for years, that you allow someone to work from home for 3 days a week, and then they come in for 2 days a week. So it's a mixture. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It's a combination. And I believe, if I'm correct, what I read in the policy as outlined, that's sort of what we're suggesting. I think that would be a good start to say, we of course believe in this in principle, but maybe there's a saw-off that coming in to touch base with your colleagues is an important part of your job too. So that part I also support. I did look at it and I recognize, to Councillor Thompson's point, that there are some areas for sure you have to work in the office. in planning and building. I think those are two really important areas. And I believe the policy sets out a number of areas where it wouldn't work. So I did have a question, which was, how many employees are we really, you know, on a percentage basis talking about? And I wondered if we actually needed a whole policy to deal with what might potentially be 10 or so employees. Having said that, I understood what the CAO said. If we want to be seen as a progressive municipality, then I think it's important that we're able to say, we have this policy in place for those who feel it's really important. So I get that now, and I support it. And I think that it is not black or white. There is a gray. And I think our policy does speak to that. So thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I tend to agree with Councillor Alcock and Councillor Wiebe. I think it's a good report. I think there's balance in the fact that people will have time to come into the office and they will have time to work from home. And I really don't think that we can use the past year and a half as a comparator, because there was so many stressors and so many unknowns and depression, who knows what else. So I really don't think we can use that as a comparator, what's occurred in the past year and a half. I like the forward thinking, and I think we're going to see more of this, and there's going to be more flexibility in how people get their jobs done. So I'm definitely going to support this.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm definitely in support of this. Working from home is sort of the new way, as you say, as Councillor Wiebe said, the modern way of sort of doing things. I think people have found work-life balance is definitely key to what they want to do. And I do feel like we would lose some good key staff if we don't have this option available. And I mean, as you say, yes, the productivity piece, you guys will all monitor that. You guys will keep track, the customer service piece, that's all going to be monitored in this. I think it does open up some opportunities, as you say, for spacing, because I know we were talking about limited spacing and how many people were crammed in one office previously before. So we don't have to look at those options as well. There's great apps on computers with, you know, this people's phones and extensions can go right there. There's all kinds of technology that has made this workable now. And I do definitely believe you guys had the district presentation on employment in this area, I think about a month ago. And I think it does speak to this area. People maybe don't live, work, and play in one area anymore in the town of Huntsville, say, or in the town of Bracebridge. People are working from home, people are expanding and growing. And it gives an opportunity for people, as you say, I mean, if it's a staff meeting, they're going to have to show up. If it's presentation for council, they're going to have to be there, right? So those things are all covered. I think it's great. I think it's forward thinking. I think the only concern I would have is I'm hoping we're not having to foot a cost of, say, a stand-up desk at somebody's home and an ergonomic chair and all of those things. I think we'd have to look at those considerations. But for sure, there's all kinds of YouTube videos on how to create your own at-home workstation. I've had to watch them. So it's there, and I think this is a great, and I'm supporting it.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple more points. I would say that it in fact will be proven not to be the wave of the future. And I think and for all the reasons I stated before, productivity, collaboration, etc. And for the people that are comfortable working from home, that may be great for them, but they're, as a result, putting coworkers in a form of isolation as well, because they don't benefit from the interactions that they could have with that person who's at home all the time. So I stand by my opinion. I don't think this is the wave of the future. It's being demonstrated all across the continent that people are getting back to work to be more productive and collaborative. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Worship. I guess I was probably going to maybe not comment further, but I think the opposite, or the alternative to a policy like this is to say everyone get back into the office starting, September 1st or whenever it is. And I just think what I like is the flexibility of our staff knowing, the management knowing who can perform their task well, where does it make sense, where do we need more flexibility, and so I think that we have to kind of leave it to the folks in charge of their own staffing to know how best to operate their division. And at the end of the day, if the productivity is not there, I expect to hear about it, and I think it should flow uphill. So again, I'm in support. I hope that the rest of the committee does in fact support it, and we move on. Thanks.
Councillor Fitzgerald, is your hand still up or is it back up?
It's back up. I did lower it. I didn't forget this time.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the thing to note here is we're not going to force people to work from home. It'll be at their option, and it will be for the appropriate positions. And as Councillor Wiebe alluded, if there is some productivity issues, I'm sure that will be dealt with just like it is in-house. So again, if people feel the need to be in the office, then they will have that option.
Okay. I'm going to comment, and my comment is at this time, I don't support this policy, and for a number of reasons. And I'm not saying that we won't have this policy going forward down the road, but I don't think this is one of the places that we have to be first in. I don't think working from home is necessarily modernizing anything. So the first bullet point in the resolution doesn't resonate with me. Achieving a positive work-life balance, everything I've heard is people can't separate work and life at home, and some are working too long, some are preparing meals while they're working. There is no real separation. So the third point doesn't resonate with me. I believe that the climate change is a factor. I believe what Councillor Wiebe said about parking is a factor. But right now, for me, the policy is about half-baked. It doesn't talk about the financials of being able to enable employees to work at home and at the office. What's the cost of that and who picks up the cost? It scared me when the CAO said that, I think that we're going to have new senior managers. I don't want a director of public works that lives in Innisfil and works from Brampton. I mean, what's that do for our community? If you don't even want to live in our community, the only way we get good help is if they can live somewhere else and work somewhere else and get paid by us. I don't think that's a good model. I think we're jumping the gun on this. And I think Councillor Withey is right in that many places are going to find out that working from home isn't all it's cracked up to be. So I would not support it at this time. I would consider it in the future, maybe in about 3 months, but not now. I think we need to get back to work. We need to put the pandemic behind us, and then we need to see where people really want to work or don't want to work. Madam CEO, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to respond to a few of the inquiries that I heard or questions that I heard during the discussion. So just to confirm, the remote work policy is a tool. So it's strictly a tool that if we need to use it, then we have some parameters around how that tool works. Pardon me. The policy is not for 5 days a week, as noted during the discussion. The requirement would be that you'd have to be in the office at least a couple days a week. So there certainly would be, a presence in the office. So if you had to have in-person meetings, that's the days that those meetings would be scheduled. The positions that will be considered are certainly ones that don't provide direct customer service. We need, the planning staff at the counter. We need, building inspectors to answer questions, those types of things. We would make sure that we ensure that we have adequate customer service, and would only grant the approval to remotely work from home if it was absolutely necessary and absolutely would work for the organization. I think the other thing we have to remember is that what we're hearing from the stats during COVID is that there was a lot of isolation, there was depression, people felt segregated, but we have to remember that you couldn't see anybody at any time. It wasn't just in the workplace. We were totally separated from our families for months on end. So there was absolutely isolation. The difference with the remote policy is that you're not restricted unless, unfortunately, we have another pandemic or an extension thereof, whereby you couldn't see anybody at all. So I do think that really attributes to the isolation people felt during COVID. The question came up, how many employees are we talking about? I can honestly tell you it would probably be a handful. To count to Deputy Mayor Alcock's comments, are we doing a policy for 6 people? Potentially, yes. but I still need a tool. And we still want to obviously be known as that municipality that supports change and policies such as this. And the one other question came up, I think Councillor Schumacher had asked, it was with respect to costs. It does clearly state, I can't recall if it was in the policy or our draft procedure, that the town of Huntsville will not be responsible for any costs incurred as a result of this work arrangement. So if you're working remotely from home, it's your job to get your comfortable chair to sit in. It's your job to make sure that you have the stand-up workstation at home. We will not pay for that in 2 locations. So I just felt it was really important to follow up on some of those questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize for coming back on again. But to your comments, I would, and I'm not sure how this is appropriate, but I would like to defer this until a few months' time, until we see the comeback from the pandemic, if it's in fact coming, until we take this step, because I think a lot of things are going to be revealed on how how we come back, and perhaps affect this in a number of ways. So I would like to walk on that motion if possible. Thank you.
Would there be a seconder for that motion before we ask the clerk to write one up? Councillor Thompson, I know you had your hand up before, so I'm guessing you're not the seconder. Okay, well, Councillor Withey, it doesn't appear there's a seconder, so I guess that would prove that there won't be any support for it. But Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to respond to Councillor Withey's comment with regards to that. I think the deferment would be inappropriate at the time, simply because, if I'm not mistaken, we have staff returning as of August the 3rd, and maybe the CAO could confirm that for me, but staff will be starting to be returning August 3rd. So deferring it beyond, deferring it period, I think would be, non-productive, I guess, with regards to where we're going staff-wise.
Well, this policy will not be in effect by August 3rd regardless, because it has to be ratified at council next month. So anyways, that's fine. I don't see any support to defer, so I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? That carries. There's no community service business. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Thompson. It is recommended staff be directed to issue a request for proposal for the purchase of a boat for municipal multi-departmental use, and further that the purchase of the boat be funded through the Building Department Stabilization Reserve as permitted under the Building Department Stabilization Reserve policy, and further that the annual fuel and maintenance and docking of the vessel be added to increase the fire department's annual budget beginning in 2022 by $2,000 annually, and further that staff be directed to create a policy to govern the use, operation, and repair of the vessel. Mr. Nagy, Chief Collins, Deputy Chief Monahan. Who's doing this one?
Yeah, I'll start if that's all right, Madam Chair. So good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. As you pointed out, I'm here with Gary Monahan, Deputy Fire Chief. We both wanted to thank you this morning for having us to go over our report. As per the report, the Fire and Building Department are looking to obtain a municipal vessel that will be utilized for building, fire, bylaw, and planning. This purchase is in response to the increase in emergency calls and complaints that the municipal departments have received, as well as provide the building department an opportunity to access properties to finalize building permits. This purchase will be done in conjunction with our procurement policy. As the report notes, we have the opportunity to obtain this asset with no effect to the levy. So we're here to answer any question.
Questions, Council? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Your Worship. I really like this idea, actually. I think it's a great idea and prudent, and especially I think for the fire department, but also for those inaccessible properties, I think for the building department as well. This will give them water access, if not, or at least easier water access. So I'm looking at a cost of around $60,000. Is that sort of the capital cost? And then a couple of $1,000s for docking and winterizing and that kind of thing. Is that basically in the ballpark, Chris?
So yes, through you, Madam Chair, you are correct in that we've budgeted $60,000. We will, like I said, be going through an RFP process to obtain it. And there will be that $2,000 maintenance fee, which will be winterizing potentially if we look at docking it. So, you know, over the 20 years, we kind of went high probably with that 2,000, but we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't be coming back with any additional fees. So, yeah.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not opposed to this. I think it's probably a natural sort of progression as our town grows, and we need these kinds of facilities at hand. I note that on the incident chart there's a number of distress calls. Are these not the responsibility of the OPP? Or are they calling the OPP and then the OPP is calling us to say, get your boat out there? Or I guess I was a bit confused by that chart. And I guess the other thing I would say, I guess we've got to make sure that everybody and anybody that is accessing this is going to have to go get their boater's license and things like that as well. So, but I don't oppose this. I think it's, I think, you know, as the town grows, we're going to need this kind of option. But I just wondered about those distress calls, because the OPP, I think, would be the natural call for that.
So I can speak to that, if that's okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, we had a number of, apologize for that. We've had a number of calls for distress, but OPP do not have a marine unit in the water, and the marine unit is usually would have to be deployed, but it's deployed by one marine officer, and there's usually only one on shift. So every time that we've been called for a distress call, our dispatch has told us that OPP will not be responding. So we've made the decision to assist the boaters. So basically OPP will not do it because of basically their staff levels as well. And they would have to put their marine unit in the water, which means they only have one marine officer, and that officer could be anywhere in the Huntsville-Naked Basin district.
Follow up, please. Yeah, well, that's concerning. Maybe the new police council will get them to beef up their service, because as I mentioned, with the town growing, you know, they're going to have to respond to these things as well, because you know, if I put my other hat on, what's our liability saying about rescuing people in distress? I mean, there is all kinds of ramifications there for our insurance. I would think that they might have some questions about that kind of activity. Certainly, obviously, we've got fire coverage, but I'm wondering about the things that maybe aren't, that should be the OPP's responsibility, and maybe they should get off their seats and get more boats and more people, you know, to take care of this stuff. I'm not sure that that's really our role, running around saving people that like that. Anyway, I'll leave it.
Okay, I'm going to bring us back though to the resolution about purchasing the boat. Chief Collins, do you want to comment first?
I was just going to comment that the level of service that the fire department provides is at the direction of council. So if council is directing us to get more involved in water rescues or what have you, they have the ability to do that. And then as long as we're operating within our level of training, then it's the same as fighting fires or rescues on the highway or anything like that. It doesn't bring on additional liability or any of those concerns.
Thanks for that. Okay, council, you've heard the resolution. All in favor? Not carries. Tanya, do you have a resolution on transit ready for us?
I do, Mayor Terziano. I wasn't sure if you wanted to do the Port Sydney Beach matter first. It's your call, totally.
No, we're going to do the transit one now. If you have it ready, if you can put it up on the screen for us.
Yes. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that?
Not yet. Still waiting.
You don't see it?
No, you're showing, there it is. Okay, great. Oh, it's gone.
I was going to try again.
Yeah, you had it for a sec there. Just seems to be delayed. There it is. Okay. Don't touch anything now. I think this was moved by, I think it was Councillor Schumacher that was going to move it, and Deputy Mayor Alcock was seconding it, I believe. It is recommended that staff bring back a report on transit listing possible options and costing for the following services: an on-demand transit service, expansion of regular transit service to service areas north of Huntsville District Memorial Hospital, including new residential buildings on Highview Drive and Highway 60, expansion of modified transit service to match service of regular transit service. Okay, can you take that down? Just council, does that pretty much cover what everybody was looking for? Deputy Mayor Alcock?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it does. I do, though. I appreciated your comment that a lot of people have been thinking that we might look at an electric bus. So does that preclude us from looking at what the purchase of that would look like? Or I just don't want it to limit the report.
I think the first bullet point had something to do with costing. So as long as, and I think Steve heard us loud and clear, as long as we can have the electric bus costing as part of the whole costing.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, and he's looking for a seconder for it. And this is this will need 2/3 of a vote. Will somebody second the resolution on the Port Sydney Beach and Boat Mooring? Councillor Schumacher, thank you. It is recommended that staff be directed to report back to General Committee with a proposed solution to be in place by 2022, dealing with the number of boats mooring at the Port Sydney Beach with full consideration to making the area safer for those using the beach and swim area for committee's consideration. Councillor Fitzgerald, did you want to speak to that?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair. I guess through discussions with Director Hernan, lots of constituents and swimmers, visitors, things seem to be getting a little bit out of control down with mooring and what type of anchors are being used for mooring. Is there a question about, is it affecting water quality and people tying up to shore? So I think there's been some incidents where boats have come loose. Boats are sometimes infringing on the swimming areas, which I believe we need to make a little bit larger. So in discussions with Director Hernan, we kind of came up with a plan that we should think about removing all the existing anchors there, because some of them are inappropriate to be in the water, some are dangerous, and some are simply just not adequate to do the job they're trying to do. So I think that the proposal would be to have an estimated between 25 and 30 mooring spots provided by the town with proper anchors, safe. And I don't know how we allot those spots to users, whether it's a lottery, it's a request, it's do we ask them to cover the cost of the anchors? Do we have yearly fee associated with it? But I know it's just a situation we need to address, because it's just exacerbating safety at the beach. So I was very pleased to hear Director Hernan to be eager to come back with something. So hopefully everyone will support this. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Whitney?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've just a couple quick questions. So right now, is it a bit of the Wild West out there? Just anybody's doing what they want? And my second question is, are these boats people just using them recreationally, or are they being used to access a landlocked or island property? I guess there would be two distinctions there if we were coming forward with something. Just wondering, thanks.
Councillor Fitzgerald, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Chair. I believe that there is no boats moored there that are requiring access to island properties or properties without road access, to be determined. And I'm sure that those people reach out to me very shortly as soon as they are aware of this. And I believe we wouldn't do anything without notifying the public. And in that instance, I believe that we would definitely allot spaces to those people who did have that requirement, rather than just to the general public. So as of right now, I'm not 100% aware. I think there's a marina that does provide dockage for most people that are road access or island access. So, but to be determined.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you. So I was down there a couple of weeks ago with Director Hernan, and we were talking about this, and it makes a lot of sense. There's boats moored right next to the swimming area, and I think it does become dangerous. If we could get them to the other side, that would be wonderful. And so I don't know if it speaks to it in the motion. I can't remember. But I would hope that if we put in some docking, I hope there's some a cost recovery method in there, whether they rent it for a month, the summer, or whatever it is. But if we put in slips, I hope there's cost recovery.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Stone. I do believe that we're going to come back with mooring options, and I believe docking may be a consideration as well. And I think if that was the case, the town doesn't necessarily want to be in that business. So it'd be a partnership similar to Avery Beach and the docks by the Summit Center, where a private partner initiates the cost and of the docking and shares a percentage with the town. And that increases after a set period of time, whether it be 5 years to recover their capital investment.
All right, all in favor of the motion? That carries. You're sending staff away in a lot of work today.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm kind of puzzled why we needed a majority, because this was requested to be on the agenda. I'm maybe confused with the procedure.
Tanya?
Thank you, Chair Terziano. So because the motion itself wasn't on the agenda, we were unable to provide the public with notice of the motion. That's why it was changed. The procedural bylaw, or that's why it was recommended. The procedural bylaw itself was changed, as you probably remember, a month or two ago, to note the matters under there require a 2/3 vote, so we don't have to suspend the rules to add.
Okay, thank you.
A resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald, is recommended the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 10:40 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following matter pertaining to the following section under the Municipal Act, Section 239, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Report Corp 2021-55. All in favor? That carries. And council, time to zoom out and zoom back into closed. See you in a minute.
Councillor Thompson, can you zoom out, please? Thank you.
Okay, I see everyone back. I need a mover and seconder for business arising from closed session. Councillor Weed, Councillor Stone. Moved by Councillor Weed, seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that staff be directed to obtain a survey of the boundaries of 294 Mineral Spring Road. All in favor? That carries. And that, council, is it. A resolution moved by Councillor Withey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock, is recommended that we do now adjourn at 10:59 a.m. All in favor? And that carries. Enjoy the rest of your day.